So, it seems as though something has led you to the campsite of the Orator. Well, as you can see, I've stoked the fire, which means it's time for you to pull up your chair and settle in, because tonight, I have another tale to tell. You know, holes torn in reality, alternate dimensions, time travel, these strange glitch in the Matrix type stories are very interesting. And while they clearly have their skeptics, people who say it's just not possible for these things to happen, it does make you wonder, what would you do if you were out on a run one day and you ran into somebody out of nowhere? It's a quick encounter, you kind of forget about it, only to be on a separate run 10 years later, and once again you run into somebody, physically run into them, only to discover that that person you ran into 10 years ago was somehow your future self. But before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, where I upload short-form content every single day of the week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and long-form content twice a week, every Monday and Friday, also at 8 p.m. Eastern. Second, all of my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Today's story comes from Redditor ComfyDW, and I'll make sure to link his story below. But if you or anybody you know has a story and you think it would fit well on my channel, please reach out to me on any of my social media and we'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and one day potentially feature it here on the Orator. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's tale. It is a story that I call Days of Future Past. So the year is 2014. Joe is a young 19-year-old man living in northeastern Tennessee, and he's currently training to be in the military. And his biggest piece of training that he does on a consistent basis is he is a runner. He loves to go on runs. And being that he is in Tennessee, the weather is usually pretty beautiful for this kind of thing. And Joe, over really the last couple of years, has developed sort of this, not only routine when he runs, but also where he runs. He has his mat rooped out and everything like that. And normally, what Joe does is he'll wake up early in the morning, 6 a.m., 8 a.m., something like that, and he'll go on his morning run, and it's just sort of how he starts his day. But for some reason, one day, Joe wakes up and he just doesn't feel like running. And this happens, every once in a while, where he'll just get up and it's just something about the day where he doesn't feel motivated to go out and run, and every once in a while he'll just give himself a break from it, totally okay. And so this is one of those days. He wakes up, he doesn't really feel like running, and so he sort of goes about his day. But as he's going throughout the day, there's just sort of this nagging feeling that he really does need to go on this run. And he's just sort of thinking that maybe it's guilt or motivation or something like that. But he says, looking back, he really knew at the time that there was some force making it so that he was going to walk that day and go on his run. And so, it takes him a little while, but somewhere around the late afternoon, maybe like 2:30, something like that, he decides he's finally going to go on this run. And so he heads out on this run, and it is a gorgeous day. It's perfect for running, and he goes along his path, and he's about 3 miles in, and he's on one of his favorite parts of his run. It's on this really long, straight stretch of road, and on either side of the road, it's just these flat fields. And so he's got this beautiful visibility of everything. He knows if there's cars coming, which there generally aren't a ton on this road. He's got plenty of space to run, and it's just beautiful. He can feel the sun and the breeze, and it's awesome. It's around 3 p.m. at this point, and so he's cruising along. And at some point, his song ends. He's listening to some music while he runs, and he pulls out his phone, and he looks down at it as he's going to switch the song to choose his next song. And somehow, even though just moments ago he's looking up and running and it's totally empty in front of him, he runs smack dab into somebody. Now, whoever this person was, they weren't there a moment ago when he was just looking up and running. And remember, the road is flat and straight, and then to either side of it, it's these long, flat fields, like There's no trees to hide behind. There's not even any tall grass or shrubbery to get behind. There are very few houses, and they're very spread out and pushed back. And so this person, like, quite literally could have come, there's nowhere they could have come from. It doesn't even make sense that they're there. But somehow Joe has bumped into them, and he literally knocked them to the ground. And so he puts his phone away, and he reaches his hand down, and he grabs the person's hand, and he starts to pull them up. And as he pulls them up, he says, "My bad, sir. I didn't see anyone else around here." And the guy grabs Joe's hand as Joe reaches down and helps him up, and he says, "All good." And as he says that, he's kind of looking, it looks like maybe he's looking on the ground for something, so he's not really looking at Joe. And he grabs Joe's arm, and then Joe helps this guy up off the ground, and then that's when they first lock eyes. And so Joe assesses this guy real quick. He's about the same height as Joe. They're both around 6 feet tall. And, Joe, he's thin, built like a runner, and clean-shaven face, short-cropped hair, And this guy, like I said, it's about the same height, but he's a lot more muscular. He's got a nice big beard. And so he also looks like he's in good shape. And so they stand up, they look at each other. Joe assesses him. But as this guy looks at Joe, his whole demeanor changes. He goes from being like casual, whatever, to color drains from this dude's face. And he looks like he just saw a ghost. Like Joe said, the only time he's seen fear on somebody's face like this is when he actually did jump scares to his friends and saw the abject terror in their faces the moment before they realized that it was a prank. Like, this guy looked scared for his life. And he takes a step back and he's looking at Joe, and Joe's looking at him. And then this guy just sort of reaches out his hand like he's going to touch Joe. And Joe doesn't really know exactly what's going on, and so he just sort of takes a step back. And he says, "All right, well, take care. Sorry again, sir." And he puts his headphones back on, and he just goes back on his run. And he thinks, man, that was a pretty weird interaction. But after literally a minute, it's out of his mind, and he's on his run. So now we're going to fast forward 10 years. Joe's dream of joining the military comes true. He's been in the military for about 6 years. And originally he was stationed over in Hawaii, and he was just, a general soldier over there, and so he didn't make a ton of money, and he really didn't get a chance to make his way home very often because the flights from Hawaii out were really expensive, and he just wasn't making that much money. But over the years, he was raised to the rank of sergeant, and he got moved off of Hawaii into the inner United States, closer to home. And so even though it had been a really long time, he hadn't been home since 2019, and now it's 2024, he finally decides that he has the money and the time and the means to make his way home and visit his parents. And so it is awesome. It's this big reunion, and he finally comes home, but man, his parents are shocked to see him. Joe, over the years, obviously he's in the military, he's really filled out. He's gotten a lot stronger over the years, and he's put on a lot of mass and strength. And he's gotten a religious exemption to grow out his beard. And so he looks pretty different than the last time his parents have seen him. Obviously, they've seen pictures, they've done videos. But to see him in person for the first time, it's totally incredible. And for Joe, it's just nice to finally be home. It's been years since he's been home. He's been off at the military this whole time. And so for him, this is a time to just see his parents and relax and catch up in his home state that he hasn't seen in so long. And so those first couple days that he's home, that's exactly what he does. He eats his family's cooking, and he gets to just hang out and relax. But after about 3 days, he decides he wants to go check out his old family home, the home that he grew up in. Now, since then, his parents have moved out, but his mom's ex-boyfriend still lives in that old home. And Joe knows this guy pretty well. He grew up with the guy. And so he calls him and he says, "Hey, do you mind if I come over and kind of check out the old house? I'm back in the area, and we'll catch up." And sure enough, that's exactly what he decides to do. He goes to this guy's house after, he has lunch in the afternoon, and then he heads over, and then he, hangs out with this guy and meets his kids for the first time and stuff like that. This guy's got a new family. And then they go out to the porch, and they share a few beers. And again, Joe's just relaxing and sort of enjoying his time. And then he decides, just for nostalgia's sake, I don't know, there's just something weird about it. He decides he wants to go and do his old running route. And part of it was nostalgia, but part of it was just the fact that he had run this route his whole life growing up, and he felt almost like it was lucky. it had worked out well. He went into the military just like he wanted. He was a sergeant now. He's making good money. He gets to visit home now when he wants to. Like, his dream had really been fulfilled, and a piece of Joe thought that this running route was a piece of why that was the case. And so for whatever reason, he sets out on this running route. And so he's going on the route, and everything is going great, when all of a sudden, even though he's looking up and running, he runs into what seems to be nothing at all. And he hits it so hard that it knocks him down, and he falls down onto the ground. Now, where he's running is, once again, this flat stretch of road where there's all these fields around. And so even if he was looking away, he knew there were no people there, but he ran into nothing. And so he gets knocked down to the ground, and as he falls to the ground, his phone spills out of his pocket. And so he gets knocked to the ground, and he's searching for his phone, and as he's searching for his phone, this guy that ran into him reaches his arm down and helps Joe up. And so Joe, he grabs this guy's arm, and as he grabs this guy's arm, the guy says, "My bad, sir. Didn't see anyone else around here." And Joe says, "Oh, it's all good." And he grabs his phone, puts it in his pocket as this guy is finally helping him up. And then Joe looks up and looks into this guy's face, and the color drains from his face because Joe is somehow looking at Joe. It is the Joe from 10 years ago who was out on his run and had run into someone and knocked them down and helped them back up and talked to them. The person that Joe ran into was somehow the Joe from 10 years later. And so Joe is looking at himself from 10 years ago, and he's remembering this weird interaction that he had and how totally odd it was, and he had forgotten about it for 10 years, but now it's flooding back in and how strange the interaction was, and now he's realizing why. And Joe, he doesn't even know what to say. He tries to speak, but his mouth is so dry, and he's so scared, and this makes no sense, that he can't speak. And so, not knowing what else to do, he thinks, at the very least, I have to reach out and touch my past self. And so he just sort of lifts up his hand and he reaches it out, and old Joe takes a step back and kind of gives him a weird look, and he just puts his headphones back on and says, "Take care, sir, sorry again," and then he just starts running again. And Joe, he stands there for a couple seconds as this realization of what is happening hits him. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh my God, I have to do something about this." And he turns and he starts running after his past self. And he says, "Wait, Joe, you got to wait up." And as he turns around and looks, nobody's there. Now, there's nowhere he could have gone, right? Flat road, no ditches on either side, flat fields, no houses he could have run to. There's nowhere to go and nowhere to hide. And somehow, past Joe has just disappeared. And so, it's been about 6 months since this incident happened. And Joe said even though, he is a logical man in the military, and he still is very logically minded, he doesn't really believe in this kind of thing, he's a huge skeptic, he just does not know how to piece together and comprehend the fact that he somehow ran into himself 10 years in the future, and then once again, 10 years later, ran into himself 10 years in the past. And so that's going to do it for today's story. If you found yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, where I upload short-form content every single day of the week, and I upload long-form content both Monday and Friday, all at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, of course, if you have a story that you think would fit well on my channel, a first-hand true encounter of something that is supernatural or paranormal, just reach out to me on any of my social media, and we'll find a time to collect your story and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And so until next time, where you pull up your chair, my fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell.